Today's the day that I've waited for a long time. I have two things to accomplish. I want to put the petcock and the sensor on the bottom of the tank. I want to put some fuel in the tank, make sure that that seal is good, because once I put it on the bike it'll be very hard to see the seal. I've checked with the with a magnet to see if there's any loose stuff. There's nothing in there. It's clean. And you saw the cleaning process if you saw earlier on in the video, but it's ready to put back on the bike. We'll be ready in about 5 minutes. First, I'm going to have my coffee. There's Luciano. Look at this. Now, the reason I am very cautious about putting a bike together that hasn't had gas in it in a while, there's a lot of possibilities that this tank, let me just explain. This tank, of course, is 30 years old, or whatever time it's old. And it has been, there's a lot of Bondo work on one side, and it has been welded, re-welded. So you never know when something is sitting without gas in it, if it does have a pinhole leak, or Luciano had that Ducati tank that had a pinhole leak. You never know, and I don't want to be safe and put a bunch of gas in the tank, come out in the morning, and my rug is a gas tank sponge. So I'm going to be real careful the first couple of days till I'm sure we're not going to be dealing with any leaks. You can hear that coffee just brewing away. That's the whole key to getting anything done today. Looks like the eagles are very hungry this morning. They're looking to come right in the window here. Hey guys, take your time. We got plenty of bird seeds. Now, one of the reasons I'm paranoid about having any extra gas in my garage, because if I do have any bikes, any leaks at all, even oil or gas, it winds up on the rugs. And then I have to throw the rugs away. Just common sense would say you're not going to clean it out. And I've invested a lot of money in these rugs. Zero money. Anyway, just to make a point, gas leaks are really a problem with older motorcycles. When we were doing track days with the original, not this bike, the original one, that was the track bike, we had multiple problems with the carburetors leaking. And Luciano, to his credit, did a lot of work, got them to stop leaking. We put all new Viton tips on everything. But it was an ordeal, because I would always be paranoid. I'd put the bike away, and I'd always put paper towels underneath it to see if anything was going to leak, and then maybe once every 6 months I'd get up and there'd be gas on the towel, and I'd have to go back and work on the carburetors. So it got to be a pain in the neck. We straightened it out. But had I not done that and just let it keep dripping on the rug, it could be not only a fire hazard, ruin the rugs. Usually the lucky thing is you smell it right away. And of course, when we picked up this bike, Luciano and I picked this bike up, it was in pretty rough shape. We put it in Luciano's garage. We put gas in it, got it started, got it running. And in the morning when he came out, his wife smelled gas, and there was a puddle of gas under the bike. And we wound up, actually Luciano wound up doing all the work, I shouldn't say me. He wound up buying me a set of carburetors. He got so sick of working on those carburetors, he didn't even charge me for them. So maybe I should get him to buy me another set. It's absolutely true, but I am, over the years, I've become very, very cautious dealing with anything gasoline. I don't store gasoline in my garage. I make sure I always have the red bottles that have the, for gas, that they have the lids on tight and everything. Gasoline can ruin your whole day. Alright, so I got the bucket with the hardware and the bolts. I want to go assemble it in the cellar. It's still chilly out here. I want to have my coffee, of course. I need more coffee this morning. I need a gallon of coffee. Now I want to be super careful that I have a clean surface to mate this up on. I've been real careful not to get any paint down in there. 1000 grit paper, I want to be very careful. This is a critical seal. Now Luciano gave me some brand new washers to put under the bolts. I'm taking every precaution I possibly can here to avoid having this leak. But there's still no guarantee. You got a lot of old parts here. I guess that's the fun of a restoration. You never really know. I don't over tighten these for right now. Okay. This wire goes under here. Another little accessory worth its weight in gold is the quick disconnect fuel line. Anytime you have to take the tank off, you just can squeeze that, break the fuel line without having a puddle of gas under the bike. Petcock's on, sensor is on for the fuel, the reserve. We're actually ready to put some gas in it. And I don't know the answer to this. The old cap that came off had a gasket around the edge. This one doesn't, so I don't know if I'm going to have to check this, that if this is not going to be, we have an overflow. I've checked the overflow, that it's clear, but that we don't wind up having gas underneath the radar detector, because I wouldn't see it right away. I have to check that too. Now, since this is a dry fit, this is just a pin that holds this in place. I don't even want to put the cotter pin in, because if this is dripping later, I want to be able to take it out on a moment's notice. So this will give me the most choices here. And what I've got to do is jack the back of this up so that I can I want to be able to see the petcock and see the sensor when I put the test gas in. I'm just going to put about 1 gallon in just as a test. And I'm going to put some towels that have relatively clean, well, totally clean anyway. So if 1 drop of gas comes out, I can look at it, smell it, touch it, whatever. I really am being cautious here. Now, the tank isn't bolted in place, it's just in there temporarily. I've hooked up the fuel line just so that I don't get any drips or drools if possible. Put a bunch of nice, clean, fuzzy towels underneath this so I don't drip and drool. And I'm going to run up to a local Sunoco station and get, well, 1 gallon or 2 of fresh high-test gas, not last year's gas. And hopefully not have any leaks. Oh, a lovely local Sunoco station. Hey, old T-Bird. Now, a couple of tricks that worked for me in the past. Anytime you work on a bike and you have to take the gas tank off, ride it until the tank's almost empty. The tank is really heavy and hard to wiggle into place. The other thing is I want to do a test, so I only want to put about 1 gallon in here. I just want enough that I can flood where that the petcock and whatever are, the sensor. I don't want to spill any because then it defeats the whole purpose of what I'm doing. I'll smell gas in the garage. Now I can see it's dripping in there. It's dripping from the sensor. So I've got a bad gasket in the sensor. I've got to take that gasket out. So you might think I'm being really cautious about this by only putting 1 gallon of gas in. Well, there's a good reason. Right now, you figure the reason. Now, all the gas is going to the front of the tank, so I can work back here without having to drain the tank, without having to siphon out all the gas. Another use for our wonderful winch. Now, we know for sure this one is not leaking. This one's dry as a bone. So it's the O-ring in here. Now, pulling this apart, of course, the gas is all in the front. Be relatively simple. and I'll put another O-ring in. I luckily have more than one. I have a whole box of them. Now the whole trick will be to figure out whether it could be one of two things, of course. It can be the rubber O-ring, and it can be the little washers that are behind the screws. Since I've replaced the rubber, these little, oh, we'll get them. I would think it might be the O-ring. But then what I'll do before I put this back on the bike, I'll do an overnight test. And this sets us back one day, but a lot better than coming out in the morning. Now see, if you didn't check that and came out in the morning, I'd be throwing away this the rug and everything. Now I can't really tell from here. Once I pull it out, I can see. Well, you know what? You can't really see. I'm just going to get up, just put another new O-ring in there. Sometimes you just pinch the O-ring and that's the problem. So I wound up running around, wasting the better part of a day, trying to find a replacement O-ring. It's a long story, but we didn't get one. So nobody locally, including Motorcycle Mall, had that part. So I guess I'm screwed. Now what it is, there's a little O-ring. I don't have any O-rings that are even close to that. They're not the right size or shape. So I'm going to have to improvise here, as you have to many times on a restoration. Now this is the sensor for the reserve, and you have a switch, and I'm not sure. This never worked from the day I bought the bike, so I'm not really concerned about it. But because I can't get this O-ring, see, Partzilla that I originally ordered them from, it was on back order forever. I never got it. I got the other one. Yeah, obviously the other one's fine. The other one doesn't leak or drop. So to improvise now, so that we don't hold things up production, I guess I'll try to order that. But what I'll do in the meantime, I'm going to make a block-off plate. And a block-off plate just being a piece of 1/4-inch aluminum that I can put a gasket under without an O-ring. I can make my own gaskets. And hopefully that'll get me through to the time that I can either find one of these on eBay, or I need the gasket. I don't need the sensor. I don't use the sensor anyway. What I usually do is ride 100 miles and buy gas. But this I knew was going to be a problem, and it worked out. It worked out to my favor, and actually to your favor if you're watching the video, because think of a catastrophe. You didn't check that this leaked, or you thought, oh, that's not leaking. And you'd come out in the morning and there'd be a puddle of gas under there, believe me. Or some other worse scenario. So we did learn something, and making a block-off plate is not a big deal. Now as I think about it, a block-off plate may be a great idea, maybe even better than putting that on, because I don't really use this, so there's no reason I have to have that. And making it, I'll just get a piece of 1/4-inch aluminum, measure these screw holes with a micrometer so we don't have a lot of slop around them, and that'll be the end of it. And if I find that O-ring, great, I can pull that off and put it on next time I have the tank off the bike. But that's what makes old restorations so challenging, is there's always something leaking, always something you have to find a gasket for, and it's just a challenge. And the worst of all worlds. Here's the worst of all worlds. I remember doing the GS and swapping out all the parts, and the petcock leaked. So I know I need, if I ever, when I swap these parts back, I have to get a petcock for that bike. So it's the worst of all worlds when the petcock leaks. Anyway, that's why some people just go out and pay a lot of money for a new bike. Just to add insult to injury, Luciano gave me a bunch of petcock parts. And look how convenient that is. Here's the gasket. Can't make this up. This is the essence of restoring old motorcycles. I'm trying to do this with one hand. When you go to lay the gasket out, it's close but no cigar. Oh my God. We're going to make a block-off plate in the meantime. That didn't work. That didn't work. See what happens as you go down. First choice, second choice. Sooner or later, you know, your back's against the wall where we are right now. Now, I also have the liquid gasket maker. I'm not crazy about liquid gasket maker. I like hard gaskets, and I know how to make gaskets very easily. So We'll use this as an exercise in making a plate and a gasket. So step one, I found a piece of aluminum, 1/4 inch, from one of the old camera mounts. It's plenty big. I think that'll get us through until we can get a proper O-ring. Now luckily for us, we have made plenty of gaskets in our time. I always have all my gasket making material in one lump. I'm sure we have plenty. Absolutely plenty. So the first thing here is find a piece of gasket, the proper gasket material, and the proper hole cutter. We need to have a hole cutter too. And you would think with all the gaskets in here, we could make a gasket. Now on a block-off plate, all we really need on a block-off plate is the 2 holes in the right position, and that the block-off plate is solid enough. It doesn't bow when you tighten the screws. So we have big hole cutter, small hole cutter. But that's the challenge, and if you don't enjoy this kind of challenge, you know, let's face it, some people don't want to climb Mount Everest. I'm one of them, among other things. And some people just can't wait to prove they can do it. Okay, we do have a hole cutter in here. I'm trying to avoid dumping this, but I realize I am going to have to dump. Well, here we go. That one may work. I'd rather have brass if I have a choice. You would think this would be better organized. Oh, here we go. Here, it's a hole cutter. It's got the tape on one end to make a perfect hole in a gasket. Okay, so we have that. We have a micrometer. We have the original part. And all I need to know is the dimension between, let's make sure this is on 0, the exact dimension between the holes, and I can go edge to edge for that dimension. It's 350. So we need to drill 2 holes, 350 apart. So on a piece of this material, I said 350, it's 348, doesn't really, 1,000, it's not going to matter. I'll spot drill these, check the spots, make sure I'm right on the money, and then drill them to as close to the bolt hole size as I can get, realistically. Now with the holes just spotted, I want to make sure they're exactly on center, and then I can get the drill out and drill them out. Okay, what I wanted to do is just do a little test fit and see how much I have to take off of there. And I've got to put that cut in there. And I'll have a block off plate here. This will get me through until until we come up with something better. And we've never used the reserve on this bike. It's never worked since day one, so this really doesn't change anything. So what I did, I used a part that mimics that radius. Just so I can go over to the jigsaw, the Dremel saw, trim that off, clean it up, and then surface this, and then from that part I can make the gasket. And the final thing is I have a piece of machined flat aluminum. The side that's going to face the tank, which is this side, I want to get that flat as possible. You could use a piece of glass just as well, but this will just make it in our favor that we're not going to have a problem. Let's see. We're pretty good. What I want to do is I want to line these holes up. I sharpened the tubing, but sometimes it doesn't go through on the first shot. The copper is better than the aluminum if you buy it in a hobby shop. And that one did not go all the way through, but I may have to just resharpen it. I made a whole video on making some complex gaskets for the GS. I know there's still out there. Now you see, you can get an idea how that works. Now we have the two holes. We just have to trace out the outside, cut it with a scissor. I've got the one side that's hopefully machined flat. By the way, they make this gasket material and for water pumps and various things, and they make it for oil and fuel. This of course is oil and fuel. Now the problem is the blue stuff is only for water pumps and things like that. But of course this is available from AutoZone. Here's the difference. You buy an old gasket from Yamaha, it's beautiful, except they get brittle in time, because these things are all 30-40 years old for these old antique bikes. Well, the new material you buy in AutoZone is probably not even a year old. So having that material, that it isn't all dried out and corroded. Now I don't know if this is going to do exactly what I want, but I'm going to spend the rest of the day doing a test. And I'm not going to assemble this until tomorrow, put it back on a bike. I want it to sit overnight without leaking a drop of fuel. Once again, there is a whole video out there. I tried to share that information. I thought that would be really useful information. I guess we'll find out if this leaks. But if it does leak, then I have to go to plan B or plan C or whatever. This is, if nothing else, this gets me that I can now put the rest of the bike together, the parts that I still want to do, and do the test. Go for a test ride, make sure I didn't forget to tighten something. This, the side that's machined flat, that's flat, nice there. Want to make sure the bolts go right through without a problem. This is all the stuff you can do before you go out to the freezing cold garage. Make sure I got the fresh washers under there. And what I'm doing, I'm going back and forth so I don't cock it one way or the other. And before I painted this, I cleaned up these areas with a little block and some 2000 grit paper, so I hope this is going to be okay. We're going to find out one way or another. So once these are torqued down, now the trick is going to be to make up a little test pan or something I can, so if this leaks I can see it right away. And then I'm going to let it sit overnight before I do anything else. So what I did, I put a very clean pan underneath it. I'm going to let it sit there for the rest of the day. I have some yard work to do, so I don't have to take my mind off it here. And I'll check. I don't want to even see one drop of gas come out of that. And once I'm happy that that's the case, and it sits overnight, and tomorrow, obviously tomorrow will be my lucky day, and put it all together. So I think it's safe to say we ducked a bullet today. Now, a lot of times when I'm overly cautious or I'm really in overkill mode, a lot of people say, oh, you don't have to do that, oh, you have to test that, ah, don't worry about that. Well, today proved to me that that was worth being extra cautious. And the reason is because I've had similar problems with carburetors and with petcocks and with tanks that have been repaired, and old tanks with Bondo on them and everything. So all I say is I hope you've learned something. I've relearned something. And tomorrow, when I wake up, if that tank is nice and dry, I'm going to put this thing together, run the engine, and you never know. It's probably going to rain tomorrow. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.